Welcome to the Great Man Within podcast. Every episode is designed to help you discover and live the great man within you. Gentlemen, welcome. I have really been looking forward to recording this episode for you because I'm going to be sharing some stories with you that I've never talked about on this show before. Stories from my childhood that have made me the man who I am today. Stories that I reflect upon quite often that are both heartbreaking and hilarious, triumphant and tumultuous. And I haven't ever figured out the way that I could bring these stories onto the show where they would have some significance or value to you. But recently, I had a revelation around the power of the subconscious mind, which is the topic of today's episode. And in reflecting upon some of the wisdom that I just learned about my own subconscious mind and how I've inadvertently created conditions in my life that have made me the man who I am today, and how I've just brought awareness to it, I thought were so powerful that I wanted to share this part of my journey with you and share some stories that hopefully I think you'll find entertaining but also informative as you start to unlock and harness the power of your subconscious mind. One thing to note here is that there's a wide variety of scientific research that suggests that about 90 to 98% of the thoughts and feelings and behaviors that we have are generated by our subconscious mind, right? So you're talking about only 10% to 2% based on whatever study you're looking at of our conscious thinking mind drives our thoughts, our feelings, and behaviors. The vast majority of what we think, feel, and do is subconscious, below our conscious detection, right? These are our fears, our insecurities, our beliefs about the world, just habits and patterns that we've accumulated over the course of our life. These are the things that are operating and running our lives. And as well as we think we know ourselves, there's so much buried, right? In the underneath, the tip of the iceberg is the only thing that we can see. There's so much buried underneath the surface that we're constantly strangers to ourselves. And I realized some of that recently. So I want to share some stories with you that will hopefully illuminate how to unlock the power of your unconscious mind. Before we do that, two things. Number one, the release date of this episode is November 6th, which makes it a special day because that makes it my mother, Amy's birthday. Happy birthday, Ames. I love you. And I don't know if you guys can relate to this, but when you're a kid, you think that your mother only exists in the context of being your mom. She didn't exist as a single human being, as a child who grew up into an individualized version of herself before you. The only reason why she exists is to be your mother, until your head semi pops out of your ass at one point and recognizes that she's her own individual human being. That probably happened for me maybe in my early teenage years, where I realized, oh, there's not only my mom, but there's this whole other person named Amy. And that's when I started calling her by her first name, Amy, Ames, Aim. And she doesn't love that I call her by her first name every so often, but it's kind of this playful thing I do to tease her. I don't know if you guys can relate to that, but Ames, I love you. And I can't wait to see you again soon to express that love. Second thing is, my birthday is tomorrow, November the 7th. My mom and I share basically the same birthday. We're just one day apart. And a big part of why I'm going to be telling you stories today is because it's my birthday and I can do whatever the hell I want. But I also see this storytelling session I'm about to get into as almost like me inviting you over to my home for a gathering of the people who I care about the most to just share some of the most important stories of my childhood life. Because I want you to see into some of those moments of that, I'll remember when I'm dying, those memories that I'll be hanging on to for my entire life that brought me sorrow, brought me pain, brought me, joy. So maybe even take a moment to just envision yourself coming into my home, in a sacred, special place, or sitting around a campfire with a few close friends and having a drink or something like that, because that's what I'm envisioning, and it's like for you to walk into that space with me. So here's what happened this week. Leading up to my birthday, I always do a series of reflections about where I've been over the past year, and just kind of getting a sense of how proud am I of how I showed up over the year of my life, and what do I want for the next year of my life. And, one of the things that came to my mind was the fact that I'm turning 42 and I feel as great as I ever have been in my life. Physically, I've never been in better shape. I've never felt a deeper sense of inner peace. I've never felt more connected to my purpose. My heart's never been more open. My friendships are so solid and secure. It's just, I'm so proud of the life that I built for myself. And, I remember one of my earliest memories was when I was 5 or 6 years old. My father had a surprise 40th birthday party. I remember thinking that my dad was the oldest person walking this planet. I couldn't even conceive of how old 40 was. I remember even saying to him, "Happy birthday, Dad. You're halfway to death." And I thought it was funny, but I got punished for that. That wasn't something they found very funny. But I meant it. When I thought 40 was old, it was kind of where the decline starts to happen. And I feel the opposite. I feel like I'm just getting fucking started, guys. Because I've had a pretty good run for the first 42 years of my life, but I feel like I've only started to scratch the surface on this inner work thing. And I can only imagine what the next 40 years are going to be like, building upon the progress I've already made from this place. Holy shit, I can't wait for that. So that made me feel a deep sense of gratitude. And by the very nature of you listening to the show, you're on that same path too, right? You may be further than me or not as far as me on your journey, but you're definitely on that same trajectory just by the nature of you listening to the show. But also in one of my reflections, I started to notice I was feeling a bit sorry for myself. You know what I mean? A little bit of a wallowing. I'm not above this too, I get into my own little funks, and the sorry for myself was coming from these events that have happened over the past couple of months. If you listen to the show, I'm not going to rehash all the details, but there was a big book publishing fiasco. I released a book on September 22nd. The book wasn't printed in the right size. The quality wasn't up to par. There were spelling errors on the back cover of the book, and thousands of them went out to my clients. That was a nightmare. And then, this scenario that I call Porngate happened, where I sent out an email about one of our episodes on porn that was supposed to go to just our podcast listeners, went to 300 of my corporate clients, got fired from 70% of my revenue immediately. And while those situations turned out to be, I've come to peace with them. They were amazing training grounds for me to show how far I've grown and how I handled conflict, and also gave me the impetus to stop dicking around in the corporate space and invest all my time and energy into this 10 million men mission of helping 10 million men live their highest purpose and potential over the next 10 years to do inner work together. And so that's all been a gift. But I've also been sitting here kind of why did these curveballs, why did these, these things that came out of left field have to be so painful? You know what I mean? Why did these have to be fuck ups? Why couldn't they have been miracles that just dropped into my lap? Haven't I been doing all the right things, universe? Haven't I been showing up and giving my heart and soul to this men's work? Haven't I been pouring my guts into every episode of the podcast, to every session of the mastermind, to all of the men who reach out to me and the women who reach out to me? Haven't I given my time and attention to those folks and helping point them in the right direction? How come one of these episodes hasn't landed in the lap of some famous person or producer that could amplify this message and get us on bigger stages and help to spread the word so I can help more men? How come one of my clients who I've helped hasn't talked to someone who's maybe able to open a door for me in some major way that, is kind of corresponding to the same level of the curveball that got thrown? How come it's all this negative stuff, not this miracle stuff dropping into my lap? And, then I started getting into that comparison game of watching how people who have been successful talk about, hey, this opportunity just dropped into my lap and I was, boom, like this thing exploded. And it's like, well, where's that? Where's that in my life? Haven't I been doing all the right things? So I started to feel that kind of shit. And as I was feeling sorry for myself, a couple of images surfaced from my subconscious mind from when I was a 12 and 13-year-old's baseball player. Now, at first, they just seemed kind of trivial. I thought they were distractions, but I just kept seeing the images of me as a 12-year-old baseball player in my Orioles uniform, because that was the team I was on when I was 12, so a bright orange shirt. And then my 13-year-old baseball team where I was on the Elks black shirt. And I just kept seeing images of me in both. And instead of dismissing them as a distraction, I decided to dive into them. And this is where I want to take you into some of the stories from my childhood. So when I was a kid, young Dominic, there was nothing bigger to me in my life than baseball. Right? That was the thing that like my father and I shared together. Like the number one love of my father's life is baseball and the Yankees, because he grew up as like a small kid in Brooklyn, New York, not confident, was smaller than all the other kids, but the thing that he was good at was baseball. Like he was fast, he could slap the ball the other way, he could play, and it was the thing that gave him a sense of belonging and community. He even ended up playing against Joe Torre, or Joe Torre and like his bunch of friends who were just like would come and steamroll my father's team. But like these were the experiences of his life that made him feel a part of something. So when I was born, one of the earliest things he did was put a glove on my hand and a ball on my other hand, and we went out and had catch together. And then as I grew up, on Sundays, I would suffer through church and then, count the moments until we could go and do batting practice at the baseball field. He would pitch to me for hours. Then we'd go to the convenience store, pick up baseball cards. Like it was my life. And so as soon as, I could start playing baseball, he put me in a uniform. And the earliest team that I was on, not T-ball, but like the first like pitch baseball was the Woodchucks. And I was a blue jersey, right? And for those 2 years, I think it was like 8 and 9-year-olds, we were dominant, like won every game, won 2 championships. And then I ended up, so all I knew was winning, right? And then I ended up getting drafted as a 10-year-old onto the Orioles. So this was a team that like it has 10, an 11, and a 12-year-old that you get to play on. When I ended up on the Orioles, we sucked. My 10-year-old team, 11-year-old team, we were terrible. I think we went like 4 and 14 and maybe like 3 and 15. We were bad. Rarely won games. I never knew what it was like to lose like that. And it was just terrible, right? And I didn't enjoy baseball all that much during those couple of years. But my father kept investing in me, took me to batting camp, learned how to play better. And then the 12-year-old season rolls around. Now, by that point, there were me and a few other kids on the team who had been on that team for a few years. There was a number of 12-year-olds. So we had a strong nucleus, but we weren't scaring anybody, right? Like we were a team that could probably maybe make the playoffs if like we played above our heads and that's about it. We had some good guys, but there were plenty of other teams that were stacked with talent that, we knew that we'd be lucky to compete against. But that entire season, our team of ragtag kids who were like smaller than the competition, who weren't really good, like we just were clutch all season long. And we ended up winning like a whole bunch of games by just a few runs here or there. And then all of a sudden we found ourselves in the playoffs against most odds. So we were happy to just be there. You know what I mean? Like there are some teams who like know they're going to be in the playoffs, and there's teams that are like just happy to be there. And my 12-year-old Orioles team was happy to be there, but not like happy and satisfied. Like we were coming after you. Like our team had a grit because we'd won so many close games and we'd had a lot of like heroes on the team. I was one of the better players in the team, but we had a lot of guys who like showed up and made plays. And so we were happy to be there, but like we had every intention of competing and winning, right? So there's only 2 games in the playoffs. Like you get like you're automatically in the semifinals, and if you win that game, you go to the finals. So we're in the semifinals against the Hawks. And Frank Darmonte is pitching against us. Now, Frank Darmonte was the biggest kid in school, right? Like he was the kid who had the growth spurt. He was tall, he was lanky, he could throw the ball fast. His father taught him how to throw a curveball at age 12. So like He was really good. And very quickly, we found ourselves in a hole. And in the bottom of the last inning, we were down 5 runs, like losing to Frank's team. And he was still on the mound. And it wasn't like we were losing 15-10 where we put up about 10 runs. Like we were just getting, I don't know if we were shut out or we were losing 6-1, 7-2. We were in over our heads in that game. And so by the last inning, we knew that chances were we were going to be going home. And then some weird stuff started to happen. The bottom of our order, which had pretty much gotten out every single time they faced Frank, for the first few innings of the game, all of a sudden found their way on base. One guy hit an infield single, another guy put the ball into play, they made an error, another guy walked. And all of a sudden, we find ourselves with bases loaded, down 5, and I'm up at the plate. And it just so happens that like when I get up to the plate, Frank all of a sudden finds his command and he blows like 2 fastballs by me. And then he throws this like wicked curveball that I swung and barely foul tipped. And I'm like freaking out here at the plate because I'm like, this guy's gonna strike me out. I'm gonna screw this up for our team. And then mercifully, on the next pitch, Frank beans me in the ass. So I happily take first base on that. And then all of a sudden, there's another bloop for a base hit. We score another run. So now they're only up by 3 and I'm on second base. And then there's someone gets out. And then we have another hit and I'm on third base. Bases are loaded. And now we are down by only 2 runs and there's 1 out. Our next guy gets up to the plate and he pops up. So now we're down to our final out. Down 2 runs, 3 men on base. And the batter who strides to the plate is Vishnu Thampi. Now, Vishnu is a lovely human being. Vishnu is not a baseball player. Okay, throughout the entirety of this season, Vishnu may have had like 1 or 2 hits the entire year. Like baseball just wasn't his game. Awesome kid, showed up with a big smile every single time, and he tried his best. But he just wasn't a baseball player, right? Like, I'm not a saxophonist, so like, it's just, we're given certain lots in life, right? Vishnu walks up to the plate, and I think we all had hope, but we all kind of knew how this thing was going to turn out, right? And so Frank is licking his chops on the mound, and he throws 1 pitch just like right down the center of the plate. And I think the ball hits the mitt before Vishnu even swings his bat. Strike 1. Frank's like not fucking around. He's not going to throw any curveballs. He just does the same thing again, throws another strike. Vishnu swings, completely misses, late on the pitch. And so now he's down 0-2, 2 outs. We all know what's coming. As Frank winds up for the third pitch, I look at Vishnu and something shifted in his body. I don't know exactly what it was, but it seemed like he made the decision that he was going to swing earlier. And so Frank throws the third pitch, the same pitch for the third time. And as I'm standing on third base, in slow motion, I watch this ball come to home plate, and I swear to you, Vishnu had his eyes closed when he swung the bat, and you hear ping. He made contact, and he ropes the ball down the first base line, and it lands right on the foul line, like in right field, and the ball rolls to the fence. I sprint to home plate, and as the right fielder is going to get the ball, the guy on our team on second base rounds third, easily reaches home, and the game is tied. And now we're looking at Andrew Matteo, who was on first base, rounding second, and now rounding third as the right fielder picks up the ball, throws it to home plate. I'm standing at home watching Andrew barrel around third base, and I'm waving to him, get down, get down, get down. And he slides into home plate as the ball reaches home. Under the tag, Andrew Matteo scores. We have a walk-off win. Vishnu Thampi's our hero. He's now standing at third base. And after we congratulate Andrew, we race, and I'm leading the sprint. I race and charge towards Vishnu Thampi, who's standing on third, with 10 other kids right behind me. And Vishnu's got this huge look of like shock and disbelief and excitement, but also terror, because we're all running at him, and he starts sprinting into left field, like to get away from us, but he's not that fast. So I get him and tackle him, and we just have this huge pile of celebration on top of Vishnu. And it was one of the most unbelievable, it was the most incredible, unlikely victory that I've ever been a part of. And I fucking love the fact that it wasn't the likely hero. It wasn't, you know what I mean? It was Vishnu who went and won that game for us, the most unlikely of sources. And I want to come back to a little bit later why subconsciously that was so important for me to understand, why I loved the fact that it was Vishnu, and why the fact that Vishnu winning that game for us cemented that as like my number one sports memory of all time. Now, let's fast forward to the next game that we played after that against the Woodpeckers, right? So this is not the same, like I was on the Woodchucks when I was younger. The Woodpeckers is a totally different team. The Woodpeckers was the stacked team, the team from the very beginning of the year that no one thought that anyone could compete against, because on that team, they were like the evil team too, right? So the guy who was the number one player on that team was Rich Favada. Rich was by far and away the best athlete in my grade. He was bigger than everyone, stronger than everyone, maybe not as big as strong as Frank Darmonte, but like just maybe like one shade lower. And he was clearly the best athlete. Had the best arm, was the fastest and most intimidating pitcher. He had a mean streak to him. And when he pitched, he won. Game over. Like he didn't lose. And so so Rich was the guy that we were playing against. And leading up to that game that week, everyone in school was just talking about how could we even keep it close? You know, because like they were going to dominate us. They had a number of other kids on their team who were also big kids, kids who could hit home runs. I hit the one single home run on our team that entire year. Like we just weren't like a big, powerful team. We were small, scrappy, heart, grit, but like we were not. And they had a bunch of home run hitters on their team, fast pitchers and everything, older kids too. And so leading up to that week, no one expected us to win. And I still remember like we had like this almost like half the school turned out. We're sitting on the bleachers and on the lawn, like watching the game. And from the very get-go, we came out competitive against Rich. I remember hitting a double off of him. I remember some other kids who didn't expect to get hits, like put the bat on the ball. And back and forth we went. It was like a nail-biting game until the very last inning. We took a one-run lead into that last inning. Unlikely, we could taste blood, like we were going to win this game. So I think the score was like 6-5. And we get 2 outs on them. They have a runner on first, 2 outs. Andrew Hamilton is on the mound. I'm playing center field. And I think we've got this game won. Now, coming to the plate is Keith Higgins. Keith Higgins is one of those kids who was like older. Like he was a grade older than everybody else, but because of the way his birthday fell, he somehow ended up being like the oldest kid in the league playing. So he was like, you know, bigger than most of the rest of us. And he comes up to the plate, man on first, 2 outs. We got a 1-run lead. First pitch, strike. Second pitch, he fouls off, strike. It's 0-2. Andrew Hamilton winds up, and here we are 1 strike away from winning the most unlikely championship. He throws the pitch right down the center of the plate. Keith Higgins is frozen. Strike fucking 3. I remember my arms shooting up into the air. I remember seeing our second baseman throw his glove up in the air. Andrew Hamilton's hands go up in the air. And as I start to run in to celebrate, I noticed that everyone else was standing still because the umpire called the pitch a ball. After the game in the parking lot, allegedly the umpire was heard saying, I didn't have the heart to call a kid out on strike 3 in the championship game. But what ends up happening on the very next pitch, because Keith Higgins is now still alive and we haven't won the fucking game yet, the very next pitch, right down the center of the plate, Keith Higgins swings this time, and boom, he hits a moonshot. That is the highest thing I've ever seen in center field, and I'm now running backwards because I'm like, holy fuck, this is going over my head. But I start racing back, and I'm like, I'm going to track this thing down. I'm going to catch this thing. I can get there. And then I hit the fence. I stop. The ball keeps going. And it lands on the other side of the fence. Keith Higgins has just hit a 2-run home run and we lose the game. The Woodpeckers, the evil Woodpeckers, end up walking off with their championship. And the Orioles, who did everything by the book, who did everything right, grit, heart, grace, who threw that third strike pitch down the middle of the plate and should have walked off with the championship, we lost. That was one of the most heartbreaking defeats of any sporting event that I've ever experienced, leading up to that point and afterwards. But that game, that postseason, that team, that entire year that we played together was my favorite experience that I've ever had in a year of sports, even when we lost in such a heartbreaking fashion. Because to me, playing against the odds, having every person contribute, having unlikely heroes like Vishnu Thampi come and bail us out, and fighting back from the depths of destruction, down 5-0 in the semifinal game, and defying all odds, and beating the top kid. Really, the way I look at it, we won that game, and beating a stacked team. To me, that's what my subconscious rewards. That's what I find valuable, because here's the funny thing. The very next season, I graduated from that league. I ended up going on to another team called the Elks, and I ended up on the stacked team. This was almost, the previous, the team that we lost to, I became that team. We now had a bunch of older kids who were all-stars. I was on the team, and everyone expected from the very beginning of the season that we would win, and we did. Mostly steamrolled everybody. And, the championship game, I think we won by a couple runs. It was a close game, but we were in command of it. And we won that championship. And of course I enjoyed it, but I barely remember anything about that season. And when I was in meditation this past week, and I had those two images of that Elks team that was dominant, that won the championship, and the Orioles team who was scrappy and unlikely, but lost, in the championship game, I recognized that I identify with that Orioles team far more closely than I do that dominant Elks team. I hardly think about that Elks team, if ever. Sorry, Schrager, if you're listening to this show. I know that may be breaking your heart, man. But I hardly identify with that team for whatever reason. I don't value as much being in positions where all things are stacked in my favor. I much more identify with being the against the odds, fighting uphill, scraping and clawing, being part of a ragtag group who finds a way. Do you know what I'm saying? I want to be on the team where Vishnu Thampi gets to be the hero. That's how I like living my life. And so I had a chance to look at how my life has been unfolding, and I started to notice, it's you know what? This book fiasco and the Porngate stuff, those are the textures of my life that I love to look back on and say, holy shit, that happened. And I overcame it. I look back at entering Sex Addicts Anonymous 8 years ago, just about 8 years ago. And I love that that's a part of my story. I love the fact that I was able to overcome something that was so humiliating for me and for so many other people, and to turn it into a strength. I love that shit. And so when I had a chance to look at that through the lens of my subconscious programming is helping me to create the very existence that I value, it started to make much more sense why the book fiasco and why Porngate happened over these recent months, is because I want it that way on some level. And now seeing that that's kind of how I've created my ecosystem, that I value these fights, these hardships so much, that it gave me a moment to reflect on, do I always want it to be this way? Am I also willing to win when things are easy? Where I can call in successes and miracles and, divine interventions, or whatever you want to call these things, where things just happen with ease. I look at my sister who's done that in her own life, right? My sister, who's a year and a half older than me, who's special needs. She went through some shit years, right? Because like when you're a kid in a public school system where nobody's like you, when you're slow, like you're on the outside looking in. She had a lot of hard years, but Mary figured out a way to come into her own. She graduated high school, graduated from community college, became a daycare center counselor. For 18 years, she worked in the infant room at the Goddard School in Suffern, New York, working with 6-week-old to 12-month-old babies. That's like the equivalent of me playing professional baseball for the Yankees for my career. Like she's doing what she loves to do. Mary is the single happiest person, bar none on the face of the earth that I know. Every day she has a smile on her face because she's doing what she loves. And even during COVID, when the Goddard School shut down for a period of time and she couldn't work with the babies, which was the center of her life, she figured out a way to redirect her energy into things that she loved, like puzzles and walking and calling all the family and friends and seeing how they're doing. She just figured out a way to keep herself happy. Mary, every day, like she's the luckiest person that I know. Like she wins, like she wins bingo. She wins, like slot machines, puzzles that she loves. Like these puzzle companies found out about her and they send her thousands of dollars worth of puzzles that like she puts together and then reviews for free. Like Mary is the single happiest person and like the world seems to always be conspiring in her favor. Even when the Goddard School, the daycare center where she worked, shut down and went bankrupt and we were all worried about it, like during COVID, I put one post on Facebook, letting people know that Mary was now available, the hottest free agent in the baby, caretaking market. It went viral. 4 days later, Mary gets a job offer. And she's now working at a daycare center even closer to home, where she was able to go get 5 other people from the Goddard School who were laid off jobs at. And she's like the MVP of this new place. Just easy for Mary. It's easy because there's no resistance there. She just gladly and happily accepts these wins, these victories. She doesn't need to fucking fight for them. It's just, she's just doing the things that makes her happy. And it just seems that she attracts that stuff. Now, I don't know about you. I don't know if like you're into the law of attraction type stuff, but the more that I've been living my life, the more I believe in it because I just see the way that my energy is aligned, the way that my sister's energy is aligned, the way that other people's energy is aligned, and we're getting exactly back from the universe what our energy is going out with. Exactly. And so I had a chance to see the power of my subconscious mind saying, hey, this is what you value, so we're just going to give it to you over and over and over again. And this meditation session this week helped me to take a look at it and say, do I always want it to be this hard? Do I always need to be pushing these boulders up the hill, or am I willing, like truly, to receive the rewards of all this hard work I've put in? Listen, guys, I never, ever intend to stop busting my ass, working hard, right? Like scaling the mountains, like going after big things. I never intend to stop that. But now I've made the choice that I am very ready and willing to receive the rewards and reap the rewards of all this work that I put in, and for it to come back in a way that's even bigger, faster, richer, more abundant than I could possibly imagine. I'm ready to be shocked by the wins that I'm about to experience. That is now the conscious intention that I am programming into my subconscious mind. You get it, guys? Like I am now consciously saying, I can't wait for miracles to start arising. I can't wait for shit to come out of nowhere that I have no idea where it came from, that creates money or creates abundance, that creates exposure, so this work can broaden and deepen and the impact can go further. That is how I'm working with my subconscious mind now. And mark my words here, guys. I know I will have future episodes where I can share with you the crazy shit that's happening because of the fact that I'm stoking those flames. I'm embedding that in my mind. And I'm thinking about it before I go to bed. I'm reminding myself of it when I wake up in the morning. Throughout the day when I'm walking through the city, instead of my head down on my cell phone or listening to some podcast, I'm taking the earbuds out and I'm looking around the city. I'm saying, where's that next miracle going to come from? Where's that next serendipitous moment? Where's that next synchronicity? Where's that next surprise going to just fall into my lap? I'm looking for it. I'm ready for it. I'm waiting for it to happen. And I fucking know that stuff is on its way. You may be rolling your eyes at me, but just wait when I come back to you with some stories in the not too distant future about how this shit works. So, with all that said, I challenge you to sit down and look at the events of your life. And maybe you're getting some things that you say you don't want, but on some subconscious level, I'm willing to bet that you've engineered it that way. Maybe have a look at it. Meditate on it. Write about it. This is how you prevent your subconscious mind from creating that drift in your world where you are just kind of going along for the ride, and rather you create that disruption so that you can use your conscious mind to say what it is that I do want, and then to give that command to your subconscious mind so you can harness that power of 95% of your thoughts, feelings, and behaviors being subconsciously driven. You can harness that energy, that momentum, that snowball rolling down the mountain, but you're influencing now which direction it's going. Well, there you have it, fellas. I hope you enjoyed story time. Like I said at the beginning here, it felt like to me you were sitting around this table with me, or like a campfire, just having a casual conversation with friends, reliving the glory days about those special moments in my early years that made me the man who I am today. And also, at some point, I hope to hear some of your stories about, those moments in your childhood that made you the man that you are today. And I suppose the final place that I would like to go here, guys, is, considering that tomorrow's my birthday, I want to make a birthday wish. Something I'd love to ask of you. My birthday wish is, I would love to know, over this last year, what's one thing that you've learned from me that has impacted your life in a profound way? What's one thing that caused you to make a change in your life or to experience a win in your life? Something that was meaningful for you over this last year of listening to the show. Let me know, because I don't always have a chance to hear from you and know what impact that this show is making on your life. So you can let me know by emailing me, dominic@dominicq.com. I'll link my email in the show notes. DM me on Instagram. You can write a review on Apple Podcasts and leave it there. Let not just me, but other men know what you've learned from listening to the show. That always goes a long way. Come into the Facebook group, the Facebook group, men only Facebook group, the Great Man Within podcast, and post something there. Let the other men know what you've learned. I bet you there's a lot of other guys who would love to interact with that. And that would mean a lot to me for my birthday. Because I can tell you that I really worked hard over this past year in bringing you my best. Brian also, of course, but this is just me speaking here too. I worked really hard on bringing you my best and open up myself in ways that I haven't before. And you can count on me to go even deeper over this next year. But a big part of that is driven by letting me know what you find valuable, what's meaningful for you, because that's often what shapes these conversations that I end up bringing to the show here. So let me know. Come into the Facebook group, share it there, send me a DM, send me an email, write a review. I'd love to hear from you guys.